This is it. Don't try to stop me this time, Smee. Don't try to stop me this time, Smee. Don't you dare try to stop me this time, Smee. Try to stop me. Smee, you better get up off your ass. Get over here, Smee. This is not a joke. I am committing suicide. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast. This week we are looking back at a movie loved by a generation of kids, hated by a generation of critics, one that did solid business at the cinema but is openly disliked by its director. 1991's Hook is a movie with some fantastic performances, a spectacular score, some of the best set design of all time, and yet it's a movie that I was indifferent towards as a kid, and one that upon revisiting I remain oddly cold on despite its moments of brilliance. I don't know how you felt or feel about this, Rob, but I still feel oddly conflicted, simply because I feel like I was the perfect age for this film to come out. I was the same age as literally most of the Lost Boys, but I didn't really give a shit about this film. And now I've rewatched it and I can appreciate a lot about the movie, but I also still don't kind of give a shit.
Well, that's a shame, to be fair, because I was hoping your plus or minus for this film would lead me in a direction, because I'm exactly the same.
Oh, really?
I don't know how I feel about this film. I have things to say about this film. I have
100%.
I have theories. I am 100%. I don't look. I'm totally indifferent. I'm not high on it. I'm not low on it. To be fair, it's going to be a low score for me. Spoiler alert. When we get to the end, but it's like for the things that worked, mainly Hook.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Bob Hoskins and Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
While arguably from a completely different movie, when they're on screen together, when it's just those two, they're easily the MVPs of this movie, without question. If it was a movie about those two, it would be a 5-star movie, but sadly it's not.
I'm a little bit upset you didn't go full into the quote mine when you did the quote at the beginning. The way he says suicide.
Suicide.
Suicide. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Oh, I love that sequence. That's the sequence that always stands out to me. Yeah. But as I say, it's weird
Hoskins,
because...
Sorry. It's Bob Hoskins when he's doing it, and Bob Hoskins just looks at him and goes, "Oh no, not again!
Not this again, for heaven's sake!" But that's the thing. Like when I was going back to this movie, I found it very easy to pick out the stuff I liked. There's the set design is some of the best, literally of all time. Some of the performances are great. Obviously, some of the direction is fantastic. The cinematography is brilliant. The score by John Williams is exceptional. But then when I try and think of the stuff I don't like, I'm like, it doesn't stand out as much. And as I said, that's why I feel so conflicted at the end, because I almost feel like I should love this movie. And I certainly feel like I should have loved it when I was a kid. But there's always something in the way. And I was wondering, for me at least, because I was trying to put my finger on it, is it like the tonal issues with the film? Because we mentioned the fact that Hoskins and Hoffman are undoubtedly the two best things about this film. I don't think there's any doubt about this. But they do really feel like they're from another film. You got Hoffman going full pimp with his double cigar. The whole boo box thing feels like it's from another film. That's super. That is like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that is a truly horrific moment in an otherwise kids movie.
Unless you're okay with scorpions.
Oh yeah, because how many people are okay with fucking scorpions, dude?
I don't know.
As long as you're okay with really confined spaces and being surrounded by scorpions, I mean, that's completely fine.
Yeah, but there are fucking weirdos out there who will play with a scorpion, they'll be fine. Like,
I mean, that is a deep cut on the internet. Jesus Christ.
I agree with you, though. But do you know what's probably the worst thing about this film? It's Peter. The dude is an asshole. The dude is, and not like Robin Williams, but Peter itself. Peter, when he's Peter Banning, the lawyer, or when he becomes Peter Pan, he is problematic on both sides. He is not good.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan. I wasn't sure if it was the character of Robin Williams' performance. I think it actually might be a bit of both. And again, to bring it back to the tone thing, I think it's because Robin Williams is in a much more schmaltzy, dare I say, and a lot more. I guess, for lack of a better term, a much more earnest movie. And I just don't think that's when Robin Williams is at his best. He's obviously great at comedy, but you think of some of his best roles, and I always think of him as like the dramatic roles, stuff like Good Will Hunting, and even like thrillers and horrors like 1 Hour Photo and like Insomnia and stuff. Yeah. But he was actually on a good run of dramatic roles before, like leading into this. He had done Dead Poets Society in '89, Awakenings in '90, The Fisher King in '91, and then Hook kind of starts this unsuccessful Williams, what I refer to as a schmaltz era, with like Toys, Jack, Flubber, Patch Adams. They all came in like the next decade, I think. I appreciate I'm kind of conveniently leaving out Miss Doubtfire and Jumanji because they're both brilliant and they don't work with my arguments. But and fuck, what was the other film? Bicentennial Man. Absolutely horrible. But it was like, when I think of this film, I think of this as belonging to that schmaltzy era of Robin Williams performances, which I really didn't care for. And I think you are right. One of the biggest issues with this film is Peter, and dare I say, to a certain extent, Robin Williams' performance. And I know a lot of people love this film and they'll be upset by that, but I'm just not crazy about his performance in this film.
No, so, I mean, let's get back to me saying Peter was problematic. And I've watched this film a few times, not a lot. And rewatching it now today, some things popped up into my mind. The first thing being, Pete, let me finish before we get into it. But Peter's the villain, isn't he? Peter's kidnapping kids, right? He's turning them into child soldiers. So Peter's a warlord to have a battle against Hook, who I can only imagine is actually trying to rescue these kids. All right, he is killing the Lost Boys, in fairness. Well, yeah, but because they're trying to kill him. I mean, if a child soldier's coming at you with an AK-47, you're not going to just, I don't know. Well, I wonder sometimes with the whole kind of the geopolitical situation between the Lost Boys and the pirates, for instance. I think a large part of it is literally down to the geography of the lands, in so much that Neverland looks tiny. Don't get me wrong, like, it looks gorgeous, as I mentioned. You know, the cinematography, the set design, everything's fantastic. But you see where the pirates are situated in, I don't know, Pirate Town. I'm sure there's a name for it. I'm just going to call it Pirate Town. And you see where the Lost Boys live. They're literally like, what? A mile and a half as the crow flies from each other. It's like, of course they're going to have a run-in. Where are the Indians as well, like Tiger Lily and all that? Because he only mentioned, like, Bob Hoskins, Smee, mentions it once about, let's play because you can pretend you're killing the Indians or whatever it is. But, like, so have they just wiped them from, like, have they done what America did and have they just wiped the... Well, I guess it's just part of a different story, and we'll get down to the structure of this movie, which I actually think, again, is really interesting and really weird. Like, in many respects, Hook is like the Freddy's New Nightmare of Peter Pan stories. Like, it's like, I don't think I'd ever appreciated before that Hook is based in our world. Like, this film is based in our world on the idea that the books exist, the stories exist, only they were written by, well, they're written by the same person, but Wendy had told the story. So that's the only difference, is like Granny Wendy is this like real person who came back and told these stories. And they all took it as fiction, of course, and turned them into books, but they were actually based on something. So again, very Freddy's New Nightmare. And I thought it was like really meta actually for 1991. But, you know, it subsequently means that you've got a different narrative from the traditional Peter Pan narrative, and some things have to be left to the side. And let's be clear, they so had to be left to the side because this movie is really fucking long. It's it's 2 hours and 22 minutes long. So Peter Pan being a warlord, making child soldiers, I get that. But does he also deserve legend status, right? Because he decides not to go back to Neverland because he's got a thing for Moira. Yeah. So is Peter Pan the only person to have nailed the grandmother and the granddaughter? Yeah, apparently so. I mean, I guess the other issue is he's the only one who people say, right? He nailed, especially when she was in with Thurman. Or Gwyneth Paltrow, sorry. Gwyneth Paltrow. Well, the thing is, right, that was one of the things I really noticed with this film, is that there are a lot of weird sexual politics in this movie. Like, Granny loves grandson. Grandson breaks into houses and kisses girls who are asleep. Boy swaps older girlfriend for younger model. Fairy tries to trick grown man dressed as child into forgetting his wife and kids. I mean, Peter Pan might be a kid, but he was getting after it. Like you said, getting in with Granny, getting in with a granddaughter or a goddaughter. With the mermaids, he lips in with them. Clearly, Tinkerbell was, I mean, I mentioned it there, but she was clearly at the end of this film like, all right, just forget about your wife, forget about your kids, just stay here with, you know, super hot Julia Roberts. Also, what was Peter Pan doing to those flowers when he was younger? Because they're older, they're trying to remember something, they're sniffing all over it. I don't usually like to go down this path, especially because it's a kids' movie, but there is one scene in particular where Granny Wendy is telling him about this. Oh, don't you remember who you are? And I swear to God, it looks like she's going to kiss him. Yeah. And you've got to remember, from Peter Banning's perspective, it's like, this is my grandmother. It might not be, you know, by blood, but she's my grandmother. And also, she's 90 fucking years old. And she's about to put the lips on me.
I'm like, God damn, this is weird as hell. And
could they not get an actual 90-year-old or somebody a little bit older to 90? They got 56-year-old Maggie Smith.
Dude, that is a miracle of prosthetic work. It's a miracle. I didn't know growing up that was Maggie Smith, and I certainly didn't know it wasn't a 90-year-old woman. That is some of the best prosthetic work I have ever seen. The only reason I can think they do it is because they have one flashback when she's slightly younger, when they're telling the story of how Peter came back and subsequently met Moira, but he keeps coming back to see Wendy, but Wendy keeps getting older. There's like one bit when she's like, I guess Maggie Smith's own age, who would have been 56 at the time. But it seems like a lot of work to put on that much, in the way of prosthetics to make you, convince you that Maggie Smith was 90. But then saying that, it was so good that you can't even tell. You think about like bad prosthetics in movies, they can be so distracting. That, I would say, is right up there with Eddie Murphy playing a white Jewish guy in
Coming to America.
Coming to America, which for years growing up, I didn't even know that was Eddie Murphy. I couldn't fucking believe that was Eddie Murphy. Dude, I didn't know that was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
I honestly, the first time I saw it, I was just like, because not everyone in the barbershop is Eddie Murphy. And I was like, well,
no, one of them's Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, Arsenio Hall, and I think there's 3 actors in the room playing a bunch of characters. But like, honestly, you look at that and you can't see the lines, you can't see the joints. It just looks like a fucking white Jewish dude. It's unreal. Anyway, I'd say Maggie Smith belongs in that rarefied air of some of the best prosthetic work of all time.
I appreciate the prosthetic work, but
was it worth it though? That's the other question.
Yeah. They could have just got somebody closer to what the age she was meant to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, speaking of age, one of my big issues of this film, and we've come across this a few times, is when I realized that Robin Williams was younger in this film than I am now. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, man. He was like 40 when he made this. And I was like, that's depressing. Although, again, I feel like I look younger than that, or maybe that's what I'm telling myself. Or when I desperately, I do look younger than Robin Williams in this film, don't I?
They gave him a good prosthetic gut. Like when he was Peter Banning and he was trying to climb they de-pirated him.
Yeah.
Talking to him. And he had just had this gut hanging over, and you're thinking, oh, okay.
I love when they basically turned him back into Pan, and they did, by obviously removing the gut, but just by kind of wind sweeping his hair.
Yeah.
Which was, again, that whole sequence I actually found quite odd towards the end of the film when he becomes Peter Pan. It's like he initially completely forgets about the fact that he was Peter Banning and he was a grown up, but then he kind of remembers a little bit. Then when he comes back to our Earth, whatever you want to call it, and he's kind of like caught halfway between the two worlds, between being Peter Banning and Peter Pan. I'm like, that all seems like, everyone has a hug and everyone seems pretty happy. But I got to think, like, I don't know, 2 weeks down the line, you're like, fucking hell, Peter, give it a goddamn break. And also, you've lost your job. I was like, I appreciate you earning quite a bit, but you know what, like, our overheads are? This house doesn't come cheap, Peter, for fuck's sake.
We talk about his job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should Brad be fired? I mean, that guy's incompetent. If he's fucking ringing Peter every fucking second to get Peter's go-ahead, should Brad just be... Like, he's a terrible lawyer if he's a lawyer. He can't do anything for himself.
They're all terrible, though. It's got the weirdest corporate experience I've ever seen committed to screen, when they're all kind of like following him around. They're all telling like jokes they had rehearsed beforehand. It was just, the whole thing's really strange. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they're all speaking in unison like psychos. It's really, really fucking strange. So I think it's just Peter and a bunch of like lunatics who clearly don't know what they're doing. So no wonder on the phone to Peter all the time. So yeah, Peter's a bad parent. I assume he's got to be pretty good at his job because everyone else is incompetent. So that business probably went down the shitter once he comes back as half Peter Pan and doesn't want the job anymore. But
speaking of things that didn't make sense as well, you could definitely tell that this was filmed in the 90s, couldn't you? Because Jack made the save yourself breathing apparatus come out from the ceiling in the plane, and they turn the plane round or instinctively try and land it.
Well, we'll get to that in a bit about how annoying the kids are. But before we do, I have to stress, I had no idea this movie came out in 1991. None. I honestly thought this came out in like 1995. When I found out this came out before Jurassic Park, I was legitimately shocked.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just assumed it was later, and maybe that just speaks to the fact that I was never particularly attached to this film. But realizing that this came out before Jurassic Park, it actually reminds you that Spielberg kind of needed Jurassic Park after this, because obviously he had like his run of the late 70s and early 80s, which is absolutely legendary. And he arguably goes on a nearly perfect decade run long after Jurassic Park. But before Hook, there was like Always, which was another flop. And it's like, I know that's only 2 movies, but I think a lot of people would have thought, maybe this heralded the end of the, the golden Spielberg era with Always and then going into Hook, despite the fact that it made some pretty decent money. But instead, I mentioned the fact in the intro that Spielberg isn't fussed on this movie. And it's almost like in retaliation to this, he was like, I've got to make sure the next one's a belter. And the next one was obviously Jurassic Park and started that next run for him. But yeah, this was like this weird middle period between his 2 kind of early golden eras. And yeah, it's a strange one because as I said, kids seem to love it. It did really well at the box office, but it was slammed by critics. And, the director himself isn't a fan. And personally, going back and rewatching it, I understand because it doesn't feel like classic Spielberg. It has classic Spielberg moments and classic Spielberg tropes. And we mentioned the fact that it can feel quite schmaltzy and overly earnest at times, but that isn't necessarily a big problem. There's loads of Spielberg movies that are earnest and still brilliant, but this movie feels just like, I think it's just detached from emotion. And certainly, for me at least, there feels like a complete detachment from threat. I mean, I know there was the bit at the end when Rufio got killed, but other than that, there's never any sense of danger to me in this film. And I think even
when they were killing pirates or killing Lost Boys, it just looked, aside from Rufio, it just looked like they were just playing. Like
exactly
when he stabbed a bunch of pirates with the coconut guard sword. I've never noticed that was a coconut guard before. Like his gold sword should be dripping in blood.
That's not unique to this film, though. Admittedly,
no, but it's pristine. Like it hasn't even got any dings or scratches on it. It is fucking pristine as a sword.
It is, and I think it speaks to the fact that this movie doesn't quite know where to go, and I think that's been a problem with all the subsequent films. Because for as critical as we have been and will continue to be about this film, I think the subsequent films have proved that it's a hard nut to crack. Is that the word right saying? Nut to crack? Yeah. Just as I was saying, I was like, that didn't sound right. But you think, like, is this film being made better by the subsequent? I don't want to say failures because they're all decent enough films. But you've got Peter Pan in 2003, Pan in 2015, Peter Pan and Wendy, which was just released, and I think all of them are solid movies in their own right. But none of them have done particularly well, and certainly I don't think any of them are going to live on in the memory in the same way that this one did. So, for all its faults, I think it did something right and certainly had a decent stab at what I think is quite a tricky source material. And one of the things it certainly did well, which the other films seem to have ignored, and you have the same problem nowadays with superhero films, was that, like Tim Burton, when he went back to Batman in 1989, he knew that the origin story of Batman was old hat already.
Yeah.
He was like, everyone knows, so he just skipped it and turned it into a Joker film. And in this film, he was like, well, everyone knows the story of Peter Pan, so we're going to do this kind of meta twist on it. Whereas all the subsequent films have kind of become more and more traditional, I suppose. So I think it's just one of those things this film maybe doesn't get enough credit for, is the fact that it was incredibly meta and it was a unique take on the source material, despite the fact that it doesn't all work.
It's definitely a good premise. What if Peter Pan grew up? But I don't know, if Peter Pan grew up, he becomes some weird corporate lawyer that moves to America, loses his English accent, apparently.
Yeah, well, I think he got, I think he went over to America pretty young, and some people, I'll give him 13. The benefit, because I know one person... He was
adopted at 13.
Yeah, but I know one person who went to America, and he was around the same age when he went to America, and he got an American accent almost immediately. I actually had more of an issue with the fact that I don't know how he ended up with Moira, because they were both together in kind of Wendy's
I put that down as well.
Thing.
So, so he fell in... Did he keep coming back to visit, and they just fell in love?
Then she went over to America, so... Yeah. No, because, so when she kept growing up, that was the Wendy thing. That wasn't Moira. He's basically gone back, seen Moira, decided to stay there, got adopted and gone to the States, which I assume was pretty soon after he's decided to come back from Neverland.
Because he was about, 11 or 12, and then he was adopted at 13. He said 13, so he went to the States. So
how have they stayed in touch?
Yeah, well, I'm assuming they stayed in touch, and then he kept coming back. But
seems a little bit like...
She moved to America. She had kids with him. He comes back then. So he hasn't been back for 10 years, but she keeps coming back.
Yeah.
She comes back now because Granny Wendy, her own grandmother, is being celebrated.
Yeah.
Where's her parents? Where's her mum and dad?
I don't know. There's no time for that. But then I think, generally speaking, Moira is largely nudged to the side. One of the issues of this film is like I never buy into the Moira and Peter relationship at all. I just don't. I don't think they're convincing on screen. I don't think they do enough narratively with it. And especially towards the end of the film, when so much of it seems geared around, oh, I've got my family. I get it with him and the kids. I buy into the whole relationship between, obviously, him and Jack specifically, not so much his daughter, but him and Jack. But the stuff with his wife, she just feels like a woman in the film who's just kind of there. I just don't buy it at all, sadly. But like I said,
you're just calling her a breeder at this point. You just used her for the kids.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
His happy thought was just to be a kid, just to have a kid. Sorry. So his happy thought was always to have a child.
Yeah.
Any vagina that came along, is that what you're saying?
No, I don't want to be that harsh because he did literally come back from Neverland.
You are literally saying any vagina he saw.
Well, maybe. Because he literally says, I always know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a dad.
Yeah.
So maybe he did just see her as a vessel for said child in the future. I don't know. Well, maybe I am saying that because I don't buy into their relationship at all. I don't buy into the romance. It is what it is. I found it more convincing everyone else trying to get off with Peter. I believed that Tinkerbell wanted to kiss Peter and take him away from his wife and kids. I believe that 19-year-old Granny Wendy wanted to get busy with Peter, despite the fact that it's weird as fuck. But I never bought into the husband and wife dynamic. I just didn't.
Tinkerbell's a sociopath as well, mind, because she kidnapped a baby Peter Pan.
No, she saved him. She saved
him from what? And okay, that
the worst mother in the world. They're all like, oh, he'll go to Oxford, he'll go to Cambridge, he'll be a lawyer. As the fucking pram just rolls the fuck down the hill, no one gives a shit.
He turned around and he said, "I didn't like what she was telling me, so I escaped." What's that fucking pram got an engine in?
Maybe he's just giving it a kick. Well, clearly, she was all talk to mum. So I think I'm going to give Tinkerbell the benefit of the doubt and say that she did save Peter, because clearly the mum didn't care about him one bit.
Kidnapped the kid, brought him in, I guess reared him to try and, I don't know, fall in love with her.
Well, that's the thing as well. The idea is that she's in love with him, but it would have been when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So he would have been like 11 or 12. And Tinkerbell is clearly, and I know it's fairy rules and stuff, and I don't know what the dynamics are in Neverland. Yeah. And I don't know what the laws are over there, if there are any indeed. But, Tinkerbell was, a full-grown Julia Roberts. So that dynamic is quite bizarre. The more you think about it, the weirder it all gets from a sexual perspective, that's for sure. But I feel like before we go back to tearing down this film again, we should mention the stuff that works. We mentioned the fact that the cast is brilliant across the board. We questioned Williams' performance.
No. You mentioned the cast is brilliant across the board. I just think two people in this are fantastic, Dustin Hoffman and...
You don't think... I think most people are really... I think... Julia Roberts was up for a Razzie for Best Supporting Actress in this film. And I know a lot of people don't like her performance in this film. I think she's perfectly fine. I think she's decent. I think she's okay in this film.
I think she's awful.
But I'm not going to go, to bat for her. I don't think she's amazing, and a lot of people agree with you, but I think she's fine. I think the kids, for the most part, are relatively decent. I think Jack's slightly annoying, but
all of the kids, and I guess that's coming from my adult perspective now. Mm-hmm. All of the kids are annoying and fucking problematic as hell. That was a Thudbutt who can turn himself into a cannonball. Yeah,
I don't know what the score is with that. Why he suddenly followed him up.
I don't even want to know what liquid they're squirting into the adults' faces at this point.
I'm not sure if that's problematic. That's just kids having fun. I think you're digging a little bit too deep there.
And then they're killing the fuck out of pirates.
The thing is, they're not killing that many pirates. At best, they're knocking them over. Let's be clear. Most of those pirates go down like stormtroopers. I don't think they kill... other than... Peter, where, as you mentioned, the fact that he does stab them with the sword, that actually stood out to me because I was like, oh, he's killing them. Everyone else, all the Lost Boys and stuff, they're tripping them up. It's like Home Alone at best. I don't think many of those pirates are getting killed. If we can move beyond...
As well. Sorry, mate.
No, that's okay.
That island was. Mm-hmm. They got there pretty late, didn't they? to the party.
Oh, the ones on the boat. So, but then it was like a paddle boat. It's going to take fucking ages, mate. It's going to take
but even
ages.
the ones they were on, they'd had enough time to set up rope swings and stuff because Boomer, no, Bangarang. When he said Bangarang, all of a sudden then they're able to swing over. They could have done that at any time.
Yeah, I guess they could have. And plus, I should mention, and this was supposed to be things that work in the film, and obviously we're already going off piece here. But I hate Bangarang. I just hate Bangarang. I hate people shouting it all the time. I hate crowing as well. When they just crow at each other, I'm like, fuck, man, give that a break. Like Bangarang and crowing, which are two apparently the key things about being a Lost Boy, I find them both annoying. And I don't think that's even just me as a grown-up. Like I said, when I was younger, I found it all quite annoying as well. But
who's the engineer of the group? Who's the one making Rufio's, I don't know, windsurfing track? Who's making a chicken egg shooter? Who's making a marble shooter? Who's making these armor webs that they can walk through and just put armor on them? The paddle boats. There's some fucking magic engineer in this that's just sorting them right out.
He's obviously just not getting the screen time he deserves. It could have been any of them, I suppose, but because there's certainly a fucking bunch of them. But as to who's doing the mechanics behind the scene, I have no idea. What I will say is it is impressive, and that will come back to the things that do work in this film, as this truly is one of the last great physical effects movies. Like this is released the same year as T2, but Hook is a decidedly analog movie. Before, obviously, I feel like T2 was the turning point, wasn't it? Like, you know, there's a lot of physical effects, but it incorporated CG. And then 2 years later, Spielberg's making Jurassic Park, which again uses physical effects, but he's really incorporating CG. I'm not sure if this is a fact, but this feels like the last big budget movie that just kind of was completely old school practical effects. I mean, you know, there's no CG in this whatsoever. And I was like, 1991, it's right on the cusp. But when you go back and watch it, it looks fantastic, but it also feels oddly old-fashioned, but in a good way. And as I said, that kind of leans, it's not just the sets, the cinematography combined with the practical effects is absolutely gorgeous.
You've been trying to do your things that worked section for about.
Well, I've got to, you know, because I feel like it's fake because because people do love this film, and I don't want it to just be because it's easy for us to tear this film down. But as I mentioned, there are so many strong elements, and the way it looks in particular, like in terms of sets, the only one that kind of popped into my head as a comparison was Robert Altman's Popeye, which is a terrible film, admittedly, but the set was amazing, which you can actually still visit in Malta now. It's become like a tourist attraction.
They abandoned it, didn't they? They literally just
up sticks and fucked off, which is crazy as well, because Malta's so small, and just part of it now is fucking Popeye land. Absolutely bonkers. But yeah, I really think Neverland is one of cinema's greatest sets. And, you know, we will get to in the news section, but I really do think the score as well is fantastic. It does capture that sense of wonder that, but yeah, to come back to issues of the film, you already mentioned it earlier, the kids. Are they too annoying to root for? Yes. I mean, to me, they often feel like brats. I mean, Dad is a bit of a dick, but he's bringing in the bunts for sure. But what got me, and you mentioned it already, was Jack's little performance on the plane. I'm like, I can't be dealing with that one bit. He's so annoying. And then you get Maggie, who's so cute, and she looks like my wife did when she was 7. I've seen the pictures of my wife when she was a kid. She actually looks like Maggie. So, of course, I feel like I should naturally root for her.
I wondered where you were going there.
But she's a dick as well. When she comes over with the fucking picture of the plane going down, I'm like, you can't be doing that. What the fuck? And your dad's afraid. Even if your dad's not afraid of flying, showing someone a picture of a plane going down is Final Destination shit. If I had a fucking 11-year-old kid and I was on a plane and he came up, oh, look, Daddy, here's the plane going down and here's you burning to death, I would punch him in the face. I would just punch the fucker in the face. Even if it wasn't my kid. If your kid came up to me with that, I think I'd punch him in the face. It's completely unforgivable.
I have to test that. I gotta get Riley to just start.
Oh, don't do that. Riley's so cute. I really don't have to punch him in the face, but I would be upset.
They were kind of foreshadowing it, wasn't they? Because when they had him falling without a parachute, he was painted green anyway. So they were foreshadowing the fact that he can fly. He doesn't need the parachute. But do you know what? That on the plane, I kind of could understand. He was acting out because his dad made a promise. Like, oh, you came to see my younger sisters play, but you didn't come to... I get that. The dick move for me was he's being tucked into bed by his 92-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
He said, "What's this?" And he says, "Oh, it's a baseball mitt. You can do lots with it. You can take things out of the oven. You can hit people with it." As he's hitting his 92-year-old grandmother with it.
Well, he is a bit of a brat, and the thing is, they keep leaning into this baseball thing, and it is one of the returning themes is the fact that he can't hit a curveball.
Yeah,
make no mistake, no, he just can't hit a fucking baseball. That pitch, when his mum goes to watch him play, and she's like, "Oh no, the curveball!" Like she knows it's coming. That ball is so high and inside. You should never swing for that pitch. I don't think it's a curveball at all. It's just a completely off-piece pitch, and he's swinging like a lunatic. I just think Jack shit at baseball, and his parents don't want to fucking admit it. And Peter isn't going to his games because he knows Jack is dog shit.
That's not the issue I had with the baseball game. The issue I had with the baseball game was his teammate. Mama's got a new pair of shoes, Jack. Take me home. What the fuck does that mean?
What the fuck does that mean? There's some weird, like I said, there's some weird stuff going on in this film.
Mama's got a new pair of shoes. Take me home.
But at least we can agree on that. Jack is annoying.
Oh, Jack
right?
shit.
I mean,
even to
he's
the
not
point,
terrible. He's annoying.
His dad doesn't turn around. Peter doesn't turn around and go, "You know what, Jack? I'm going to come to every game. I promise." No, I'll come to 6. I'm only doing 6.
Well, 6 is enough. Yeah. I mean, you saw the level that they're playing at. 6, I mean, Jesus Christ, he's the best dad in the world if he managed to go to 6 of those games. But like, that's the thing. The problem is Maggie is the much more likable of the kids, but she's sidelined in favor of Jack because this really is a father-son story. So, you know, despite the fact that she is more likable and much cuter, the emphasis is always on Jack, and Jack is a bit of a dick. It just can't.
You know what, as well? I mean, Jack is a dick to the point as well that any time his sister probably gets annoying moving forward, he can turn around and go, fuck you, I'm Dad's happy thought.
Yeah. Did he say Jack's his happy thought?
Yeah. He said, "Look, Jack, was it Jack? Jack, I found my happy thought. You'll never guess where it is. It was you."
Oh, yeah. And Maggie's just sitting in the background, just bawling her eyes out, like, what the fuck?
In all fairness, her happy thought was Mum.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing with Maggie. Like, when he's, like, climbing, you know, when they're basically hung up in the air and he's got to climb along the bit and try and reach out to them. Yeah. And it's like, "Oh, can you reach me?" And Maggie's like, "Oh, Mummy would be able to do it." I'm like, "You little shit. What a mean-ass thing to say. That little bitch. She might be adorable, but she's a piece of work. She's a fucking piece of work." But
Mummy would do it, you prick. Come on.
Yeah, what the fuck? Well, that was the thing. The next section I wanted to cover was actually the Lost Boys section, because I actually think it's the weakest part of the film, and it sounds like you fucking you hate the Lost Boys, so we should be on the same page here. I actually thought, despite the fact that it's my least favorite part of the film, I thought they did a great job of making a huge cast both unique and memorable. Like, I think that is one of the strongest aspects of this film. It's something you need to do in, say, like horror films, for instance. The best horror films make all the characters, all the side characters, at least partly memorable. So when they die, you remember afterwards. Obviously, they're not all dying in this film, other than Rufio. But, you know, with a relatively limited screen time, I still think all the kids have their moments, and they're like visually different enough to stand out. It's not quite the level of the Goonies, but again, they're not the biggest part of the film. So I think that's a tick for this film for sure. And it's certainly like,
before you go into any,
no, sorry,
you've seen an adult Maggie.
Yes,
Denise Van Houten.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen that one picture, the same one you're holding up, and yeah, she looks absolutely smoking hot. So,
she
looks
like I mean,
but she wasn't in any other films, though, was she? She was in this, and I think one other movie, and those
American
were her own
Experience.
credits.
Oh no, Cannonball. But she hasn't done much, to be fair.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think she's in 2 or 3, but yeah, she is absolutely smoking now. But it's weird. I actually thought they captured the concept of what a kid's world might look like. To me, at least, it felt like Lord of the Flies. But if they all got on, like, that's what this feels like. It's like, Lord of the Flies is if everything goes to shit and they all turn on each other. This feels like if all your mates got together and you actually got on, and just, like you said, hopefully one of you knows how to make shit. But obviously somebody's doing the right thing. But I guess how much of it can you just pass off, though, is just, it was imagination.
That's right.
Like, like the dinner sequence.
It is interesting, isn't it, that all these kids are living on hopes and dreams, basically. Mm-hmm. Their food are hopes and dreams.
Well, the thing is, I never really thought of it that way, because it proves how much of an old man and how much I've grown up. Like, after the food fight, it cuts to Peter, and he's all clean, and his clothes aren't covered in food. Yeah. And I said to my wife, I was like, "Oh, how'd that happen? Who's gone and cleaned his clothes?" And she just looked at me, she goes, "It was pretend." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it was pretend. I'm not like the kids. I've just immediately gone to, oh, how did you clean those clothes? It's like none of that actually happened. It was all just in our fucking heads.
Imaginary, because not only have they got like, I don't know, massive turkey legs and burger, whatever's on that thing, but they've also got weird purple cream buns. And
I actually thought that stuff looked really delicious. That weird putty stuff, I just always thought it looked delicious. Like my wife now, she's got this unicorn ass butter. No, it's not ass butter. That's what I call it.
What?
It's shave butter. Shave butter. That's it. I thought it was called ass butter. I don't know why. It's called shave butter. But it literally looks like the stuff they eat. And I actually see it in the tub, and I think it looks quite appetizing. Obviously, it's for shaving rather than for eating, but it looks the part.
You're the kid that ate Play-Doh.
I mean, I never had Play-Doh, but I think it probably for good reason that I would have ended up eating it. I just thought it always looked delicious for some reason. I think it's, do you know why? Because it looks like coloured meringue, and I fucking love meringue, basically.
If we ever make T-shirts for this show, we've got to have a T-shirt that just says ass butter.
Ass butter.
Fucking hell.
Just with a picture of like the table from Hook with all the food. It just says ass butter. Or you could have a picture if you know when like Peter stands up on the table and they all throw the food at him and it's just covered head to toe, and just below it just says ass butter.
I've never taken I take a lot from these episodes when we do them, but I will never take anything. Like I'm going to try and incorporate that into my life. Just ass butter.
Ass butter, yeah. I mean, it's good too. If it ends up on a T-shirt, I'll be over the fucking moon. But I mean, that scene also, there was another part of that scene which reminded me how old I was, because I played football for the first time in like 6 months this weekend, and I've just been like hobbling around the house since. And when Peter, after he did the training, he kind of walks around the corner and he's just holding every part of his body. I'm like, man, that is exactly what I'm like now. It's so fucking depressing. I was like, oh God, I'm just old. This film's just reminding me I'm old.
That's the problem with it. We did this podcast. It was a great idea 112 episodes ago. Let's do the films of our youth. Let's do the films we grew up with, the films we loved as kids. Then you realize, oh, fuck me, that means I'm very old.
Yeah, it really does. And it's especially those comparison moments when you're watching the characters and go, wait a minute, how old were they when they did this? That's constantly upsetting. As is the fact there's a part in this film where Jack is trying to explain baseball to Smee, and it just fucking reminded me so much of me trying to explain baseball to my wife. He's like, so just to remind me, are there men on feet or are they on horseback? I'm like, fuck, that is exactly the kind of question Bethan's asked me about baseball 700 times. It drives me up the goddamn wall.
I love that as well. But don't you drag your poor wife to games as well?
100%. But you think she's been to enough now that she would fundamentally understand that the basics, and that nobody's on horseback. We've been to like 6 games in the States. There was never anybody on horseback going from first to second. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I mean, she would watch it if it was on horseback.
She probably would. Would. All right, before we move on, I've got to bring up my issues with the ending of this movie. So I've got a few I've lined up. There's the bit where he finally defeats Hook, which is very sad because we all wanted Hook to win. And he says, give me my dignity, Jack. And basically what he's asking for is to be able to hold his hair while he dies. Like, they bring him back his hair, and he doesn't put it on his head. He just fucking holds it on his hand, waiting to be run through by Peter. It's very bizarre. Did the crocodile come back to life? That was weird as shit. I don't know what happened at the end there, where he kind of stabbed into the crocodile, smoke comes out, then the crocodile's mouth opens, and everyone just kind of watches as it falls on top of Hook. Bizarre. Moira and the housekeeper are far too cool about Toodles flying out the fucking window. I get it, why Jack and Peter and stuff are like, oh, of course, he's found his marbles, he's got his pixie dust, he can fly out the window. Moira and the housekeeper don't know shit about any of that, and they're just like, oh, there he goes, flying out the fucking window. What the fuck?
Not just that, right? And I've got issues as well I want to bring up after you, but not only, right, they're cool with him flying out. Even Moira does like a happy scream. That fucking scream.
Yeah. Why isn't she just screaming like what the
Liza. But nobody has questioned where Peter's gone. Like he's the last they saw of him, he was moping around the house, and then this isn't the next day. It's got to be. Is it the next morning?
I don't know. I guess at that point, she's just happy to have her kids back, which again, she doesn't question. But I always put that down to, I don't care because I don't want this film to be any longer. But one of my other issues, and this is maybe my biggest issue, in terms of, again, this film not really knowing what it wanted to be, was Bob Hoskins showing up at the end in London. Like, that almost suggested that it might be all a dream. But there's so much proof to the contrary that doesn't hold up for a single second, because his kids are back. You know, there's the whole thing with Wendy. Too many people have been to Neverland. He's been to Neverland. It's not, you know, it wasn't like we were just seeing the movies uniquely from his perspective. We've seen too many perspectives. We've seen too many people on their own having these experiences of Neverland. So it just, for Bob Hoskins to show up in London at the end of the film makes zero sense. It's almost like, oh, well, let's just kind of hint towards the fact that it might have been made up, despite the fact that it clearly fucking wasn't. It just bothered me.
To the point where when, like, after Tinkerbell goes away and lights, like his eyes get accustomed to the sun again, you see a Peter Pan bronze statue.
Yeah.
So they're kind of hinting that he's just been outside in the snow all night, and he's just...
Yeah, that's another weird one, the fact that he's next to the set, which is a nice visual touch, but alongside the Bob Hoskins things, again, suggests that he's just kind of passed out, looked at the statue, and just made up this story in his head.
Yeah.
I just don't care for it at all. But sorry.
A couple of things that didn't work for me. The latches on the doors, which were shaped like hooks, like proper actual hooks, those latches are not going to stop anything.
No, they're really not. If you'd think they'd be a bit more careful given the history, for sure.
Yeah. And it was weird, and a lot of mine are visual. His hook kept changing direction. Do you notice that?
Not really, no.
So I'm trying to think, if his hook with his forearm, it should be pointing down. But there were times when it was up. So I'm trying to do that with my arm. Unless he's turned the hook. That's really...
I think he can turn the hook. I think that's...
It was fucking in weird, different ways. The third one, he said, Jack, right, I'm so angry. I said he's angry. He's passionate about that. I just spat on my keyboard. He said to Jack, right, I'm going to pierce your ear with my hook.
Oh, yeah, that was insane.
Okay.
Basically, I'm going to put a hole inside your head.
Yeah, so basically... But the size of his hook, which actually gets girthier as it goes down, unless he goes...
I just like the word girthier. It has certain connotations, put it that way. It sounds like he's putting his dick in his ear. That's what it sounds like now. It sounds like
you know what he needs, doesn't he? He needs some ass butter.
Oh, dear God.
So, if he pierces that, unless he just pulls out straight away, he's going to make...
giant, he's going to end up with one of those fucking, like, 2001 Incubus fucking earrings.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, that feels like a lot. I know you guys are pirates, but I'm not sure if that's what you're going for.
The other thing that ticked me off was everyone watching the sale as it's being cut. Nobody's thinking, oh, that's Peter Pan up there, cutting it. They're just looking. And apparently they waited about an hour for him to do an intricate design of a cloth Peter Pan.
Yeah, they don't seem like the smartest bunch, though. You know, they're all pretty dopey. And, you know, I think Hook, personally, is just there for the spectacle. He has numerous opportunities to kill Peter, but obviously he wants his war and stuff. So I think he's a showman.
What's with the war?
Well, I think it's just, like, I think it's just what he defines his character by. It's like, oh, this is going to be my legacy.
See,
you know,
I
and
think
all that.
He has to bring Peter back to kill him, so Peter will never regain his memories and start kidnapping more kids.
Oh, maybe. So you're making Hook to be the good guy again, maybe?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Like the whole Karate Kid thing again, right? We're looking
for God's sake.
Reverse, right? Peter Pan as a kid, and I've said the word already, is a fucking sociopath. That he is.
He's a bit of a dick. I'm not sure if he's the bad guy. I still think Hook might be the bad guy. But
so where's the original, aside from Toodles, is there no original of the Lost Boys? I
don't think so.
Okay, so when he fucked off, he took the original Lost Boys with him and just left all the other ones? Because they've all been there, because they all know people.
I have no idea. I'm not familiar enough with the original story. Like, I know there are certain things which it kind of... I think, say, Tinkerbell is quite jealous in the books, for instance, and that's what they've tried to force into the film. But it comes across like she's a psycho more than anything else, because there's nothing else to back that up if you haven't read the books. As for the rest of the characters, you have that bit where, that hidden tree has the names and stuff on there. I don't think there's any explanation as to where they all bugger off to. But I've got to assume that basically after after Peter left, maybe they all disbanded and went back to Earth. So I like the idea that if there was a sequel, he'd go and get the gang back together or something.
Who's dyeing Rufio's hair as well?
I don't. They're doing a good job of it. The hair's fucking dope. Like growing up, I was like, all right, you can see he's the leader of the group. I mean, he looks pretty badass. In that
he's the oldest. The rest of them are 10 or 11. He's 16.
Let's be clear. Like, if Robin Williams shows up and you're, like, say, 11 years old and he's standing next to Rufio, you're like, dude, I'm following Rufio. He's a badass. Why the fuck would I follow Robin Williams' hairy ass? Oh, speaking of his hairy ass, supposedly he had to shit all his body hair off because,
Yeah, he had to. I think we had that in facts. He had to shave, like, his arms and his chest and anything they showed.
You can't have a guy pretend to be a kid who's covered in fur. It just doesn't work.
Well, because he was famously a very hairy man, wasn't he?
Super hairy. Super hairy, right down to the knuckles. I've got one friend like that where he's not quite as hairy as Robin Williams was, but he's got that kind of unbroken line of hair from the top of his head all the way down to his toenails. Yeah. It's like, his neck hair comes right up into his beard. His beard goes right up towards his eyebrows and stuff. So there really is just no break all the way down.
Like a werewolf.
Absolute fucking wolf boy. Unbelievable. Sorry, Trout, if you're listening. Should we move on to favourite scene, or is there anything else you want to cover before we do that?
No, because we can cover it in favourite scene and we can cover it So basically, so let's move on to favourite scene. Okay, cool. So as it was your film, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's easy for me. It's definitely Hook threatening to commit suicide. There was a reason I used that quote at the start of the film. It's basically any sequence where it's just Bob Hoskins and Dustin Hoffman playing off each other. That's the film I want to see. That's my favourite part of the film, and that's my favourite sequence of theirs. So yeah, really easy for me. Definitely that.
So it's a Bob Hoskins one for me as well, and it's really quickly, but it's him. It's Smee, what about Smee? Wait a minute, Smee's me. And then he's just nicking all the jewelry from... He's like...
Because the thing is, the obvious one is Dustin Hoffman. He's so brilliant. He's larger than life. My issue with Dustin Hoffman is the fact he looks so much like Camilla Parker Bowles to me. There's something about the way when he smiles, he kind of pushes his teeth into his lip, and it looks just like the way Camilla Parker Bowles smiles. So I don't know. Like, that's my only issue, is that every time I see Dustin Hoffman's Hook, I think of Camilla Parker Bowles. But other than that, he's brilliant. But the quiet MVP is... Bob Hoskins is so fucking good and so likable in this film. Like you say, it's all just like little moments, but every time he's on screen, he totally elevates the movie.
Because if you were going to throw him in, it's like when he picks up the hook from the sharpener guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know the proper...
We'll just go with the sharpener guy. Yeah, that sounds about right. That checks out.
And all the hookers are going, look out, here comes Smee, and just a little smile on his face as he's dancing with his hook, and he just sees these hookers just...
Well, that is one of the things about that part of Neverland. It's exclusively pirates and hookers. Like that is literally all that's there. So they're obviously having a good time. Stupid Lost Boys trying to ruin everything. In terms of loves, number one, unsurprisingly, I'm not going to say Hook or Smee. I'm going to say Hook and Smee. I think they're a duo. They come together. So I think it was, one thing that I love about this film.
That sounds a bit, I don't know, Hook and Smee sounds a bit uncomfortable.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Jesus Christ. But anyway, Hook and Smee, that's my number one love, which again, see, you've said it now, it just sounds fucking weird every time I say it. Number two, the set design and cinematography, which again, like Hook and Smee, come hand in hand.
Yeah.
Again, see, everything sounds gay now, come hand in... And number three is the score, which is spectacular.
Cool. I mean, I will, before I go on to the only thing that I take from this film, I can't keep saying Smee without thinking about my mum and dad's old dog, my old Yorkshire Terrier, which was named Mr. Smee.
Oh, cool.
Because they bought it for my niece when she was about 7 or 8, and she was a fan of this, so she just named it.
Everyone was a fan of this except for us. Why weren't we fans of it? Like, we were legitimately the perfect age. Well, you were 8 and I was 9 when this came out.
And
perfect age.
We've already said it on previous episodes. Is because we were already renting 18s and 19s, like there was 19.
There is something
15s and 18s from the video store.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Die Hard around that time and stuff.
Yeah.
So this is.
Sorry.
I'm just saying we're renting Die Hard and Terminator and things like that. So this, I don't know, it just didn't feel.
I actually think as well that maybe, despite the fact that we were 8, 9, like, you know, in line with the kids in this film, I actually think the film may have skewed a little bit younger. I suspect a lot of people who love this film grew up and were watching it when they were, say, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. I think that's probably the perfect age because you get caught up in the magic of it. Because we love films like kids, like, you know, People Under Stairs was a film like you and I mean, I didn't watch it, but I know a lot of my friends loved it. Yeah. Or The Goonies, you know, that being the obvious one. But they all always had a bit of an edge to it. And that's what this film lacked. There's like little hints towards it. There's actually one scene, which I think is brilliant, which totally reminds me of the relationship I have with my dad, where Jack is kicking off in the house and suddenly Peter lets off. And, you know, he's trying to talk on the phone. He says, will you just shut up? And the way he reacts straight away and says, I'm sorry. That reminds me of being a kid when you were like scared of your dad. When he I remember my dad would grit his teeth and all the fun would go out there and you didn't know what you'd done. You just immediately, I'm sorry. I'm like, you know.
You didn't know whether to leave, stay, you just stood
exactly.
Still, yeah, no.
And I just thought the movie could have done with a bit more of that. And that edge is only ever hinted at. And I think that's why maybe we weren't attached to it when we were like 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever. And why it maybe kind of, you know, spoke to younger kids in particular.
Yeah. So my loves, Hook and Smee.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, yeah, we've already said it. They were great together. They were great apart. They were just really good.
Yeah, they're the best part of the film.
Secondly, Hook saying Rufio.
Rufio.
Yeah.
Again, that bit is fucking cool. It's got a threat to it. They have that fight. It obviously ends up with Rufio being dead. That's one of the better parts of the film. It just needed more of that, man. And I think that you see, the more we talk about it, the more I think that's why I wasn't connected to it. That's why I still have that issue with it now, is that it just doesn't have enough bite to it.
Yeah. I mean, I could say the visuals. I like the visuals and things like that. The usual things. But to be fair, it was the one line. Can somebody give me a hand? I already have.
That's a good line, though. Yeah. It's a good line. Yeah. It's a great line.
I'm gonna slip a fourth in. Yeah. Just learning from this podcast. Ass butter.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Ask Patrick is then. In terms of hates, number one, tonal inconsistencies. I've already mentioned it before, but I think that's maybe the biggest issue with this film. Number two, Granny Wendy trying to kiss Peter. I legit, and I'm not just saying that to get a rise out of people for the podcast. I legitimately found a creep when I was watching. I was like, dude, is she going to kiss him? I knew she doesn't, obviously, because I would have remembered it, but it definitely looks like she kind of like starts playing with his collar. I was like, well, this is just fucking bonkers. But and number three, one of the other major issues of this film, it's too long. It's just, there's a whole middle section where, you know, you have that interaction between Peter and obviously Hook for the first time on the ship. It never really goes anywhere. Then the film kind of meanders for a bit. I just feel like this film could have been tightened up and turned into a 2-hour movie. A much better 2-hour movie at that.
So for me, it's the Lost Boys. I wasn't a huge fan of them, to be fair. They were.
I get it.
Yeah, quite annoying. I'm putting his kids in there as well, like Jack and I keep calling them Moira, Maggie. Jack and Maggie. They're just
Oh, I can't put Maggie in. I'll put Jack in there, not Maggie. Maybe I'm just saying that because the whole wife thing, but never mind.
Well, yeah, but I don't know.
And you've seen how hot she is now. Jesus Christ, give the girl a break. Fuck's sake.
Your wife.
Yeah, my wife's hot as well, but you know.
Right, moving on very quickly.
Yeah.
So the kids I wasn't a huge fan of. Was that my first one or my second one?
Well, they were both kids, basically. So you don't like the Lost Boys or kids, and you don't like the kids who aren't Lost Boys.
No, I'm throwing them all in the same one. Any kids in this film I wasn't a fan of.
Anyone under 5'2", you fucking hate them. Simple as.
Yeah, fuck off. What else did I hate? I should really write.
Julia Roberts. Didn't like her.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of Julia Roberts. I don't know if I'd go as far as hating her. I hated the first introduction of her, where she just won't stop talking. Like, just take a minute, take a breath.
She's a fairy, though. You know, I think they're supposed to be quite kind of cheeky and, you know, energetic, I suppose.
Peter Banning, I hated in this film.
Yes, I thought that might be in third.
Yeah, there was something, it's random because obviously it's based on, but I just hated him in this film.
I guess I know what they were trying to do from a thematic perspective, the whole, like, he's becoming a modern day pirate. He's afraid to fly. He hates kids. It's all the stuff he shouldn't be. It's the complete opposite of what he was as Peter Pan. But because that part of the film drags on a bit, you have to stay with that character for too long, and eventually he does start to grate a bit.
Yeah. And I'm going to add a fourth again.
Here we go.
No, you're all right.
Take your fucking liberties, this guy.
I hate the little nods, like, ooh, look, it's Phil Collins. Ooh, that's Glenn Close. Oh, there you go. There's George Lucas. Ooh. Like, fuck.
There are tons of
yeah.
Well, I don't think it counts as a cameo because I think he's just in it. But Rocky's trainer, I'd never noticed is in it before. Like, he's just one of the pirates.
Rocky's.
You know, Rocky, the guy who trains Rocky in Rocky, he's Apollo Creed's trailer, but trains him in Rocky 4.
Yeah.
I forgot his fucking name. Jesus Christ, what's his name? He's in it. Gwyneth Paltrow, obviously, she kind of comes in. That's not really a cameo, but it feels like now. Although, one thing I will say is that Gwyneth Paltrow has looked 36 forever. She just always looks 36. She looks 36 when she's 17. She looks 36 when she's like 50 odd now. It's just bizarre. Phil Collins, George Lucas, and Carrie Fisher already mentioned. Carrie Fisher actually worked on the screenplay, which is bonkers.
Tony Burton as Duke.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, he's in this film. David Crosby of The Birds fame, isn't it? Jimmy Buffett is the pirate that tries to steal Peter's shoe. Yeah. Glenn Close is the Boo Box pirate.
Yeah.
And I was like, I always just knew that was a woman. You could tell it was somebody in drag, but I just never realized it was Glenn Close till I looked it up. So yeah, a whole bunch of cameos in this.
Was it her? Because I was trying to actually... because you don't really see her face when they get towards the box.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just her when they grab her, or was it her all the way until they put her in the box?
I think it was all the way until she got put in the box. This box, which apparently isn't a big deal, and it's fine as long as you like scorpions, you fucking psycho. The Boo Box is the word. Who the fuck likes scorpions? You madman.
There's people out there that like scorpions.
Nobody likes having scorpions dropped on them when they're in a dark place. Presumably to stab.
It's not dark, is it? That fucking hole that they opened up is the...
But you get a tiny bit of light, just enough to see the fucking scorpions being dropped. All right, moving on.
Dude, chuck a house spider in there, I'm shitting my pants.
But a scorpion's okay, yeah. Jesus Christ. Just because they look cool doesn't mean it wouldn't be terrifying to have them dropped on you. So we've done the loves, we've done the hates.
Yeah, alternate titles.
Are there any alternate titles, though?
Yeah, there are.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's only
that felt like it was the end of that sentence. Yeah, there are. Moving on.
There's only a couple. And obviously they all follow like the Hook thing. So you've got Brazil, Hook, The Return of Captain Hook.
Okay.
Estonia, Captain Hook Hand.
No, that's not a real thing. I've been to Estonia. They seem like reasonable people. I'm just not buying into the fact that that's the title they used for this film.
And Italy, Hook, Captain Hook.
I hope they all say it with the same intonation that you use. Hook, Captain Hook. There's a question mark at the end of it.
Yeah. Or like he's given his name like Bond. Hook. Captain Hook.
Captain Hook. Yeah, why not? Facts. I know there are a whole bunch for this film, so I assume you're going to have to be selective.
Yeah, I'll be a little bit selective. When the Bannings fly to England, the pilot's voice is Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, yeah.
The guy over the tannoy, obviously.
I thought someone told me it was Morgan Freeman.
That wasn't Morgan Freeman.
No.
Yeah.
Don't know where I got that from.
Bob Hoskins bought beer for 300 plus extras after a lengthy and complicated scene was cut. So he's the only one thinking, sorry boys.
That's very good. I like the idea that Bob Hoskins was cool as shit. I just like that idea.
The word bangarang is actually a Jamaican slang for uproar, disorder, or disturbance.
No wonder it sounds so uncomfortable coming out of little white kids' faces. I just don't like bangarang. Maybe if it was said with a Jamaican accent, I'd feel a bit better. Bangarang, it sounds better. But certainly better than when those white kids said it.
I was thinking, right? I said we should never do Rush Hour, because if we ever did Rush Hour, you would be cancelled.
We 100% have to do Rush Hour for that reason.
There are basically two accents that you will keep doing.
Oh, 100%. Give me half a chance. And will I do them well? Absolutely not. Will I keep doing them regardless? Absolutely.
So, Glenn Close's bearded pirate, who was locked in the happy box, was named Gutless.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, well, pirates always have horrible names, fair enough.
Yeah. We haven't mentioned Rufio, played by Dante Basco. He was really good in this, to be fair.
He is good in
a lot of the Lost Boys, but Dante Basco was
I thought you were a little bit harsh on the Lost Boys in general. As I said, I actually thought they were all pretty memorable. They stand out. Each one's given their moment to shine, but Rufio is the standout. He both looks the part, sounds the part. And you can imagine as like a younger kid, like if you were like 11, 12, and he was like, I'm going to be the leader of this group. You'd be like, yeah, of course you are. Look at the hair. He's riding around on like a giant skateboard thing. He's like the coolest fucking kid in the world.
The fact he went on to play Zuko in Avatar.
Oh, Jesus, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was Zuko in the Avatar TV show.
Yeah, fair enough.
What else have we got here? You've already said about him shaving. Oh, David Bowie turned on the role of Captain Hook.
Oh, that would have been interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore Dustin Hoffman, as we already mentioned. But you know, that is a very interesting alternative.
I've never known. I only noticed it because I read the fact before I watched the film. But there's a kid in here called Too Small. He's the one that looks at Peter and says, "Welcome back to Neverland, Panda Man." But if you look at that scene closely, Robin Williams is mouthing the words to him.
Yeah. That's James Maddier. He's actually, of all the Lost Boys, he's probably done the best. If you go back and look through their like IMDb's, he's actually been like, well, not being a massive star. And none of them have really gone on to do, you know, none of them have turned into a breakout star. I don't want to like undermine the fact that some of them have gone on to have, you know, very successful careers in their own rights. None of them have really pushed on, but he's actually done arguably better than most certainly in terms of the roles he's popped up in.
I think Dante Basco's done the best as the Lost Boys.
Which one's Dante Basco?
Rufio.
Oh, has he really? Like, what's he done? The Avatar thing? And
no, he's done loads of films. And you should look at his IMDb.
I really should check it out.
Loads of things.
Well, James Maddier he's one of those guys who's popped up in those things as well. So maybe it is those two. But I think with Rufio, I know what you mean. He has been in a whole bunch of stuff. But I think, like, watching this film back in, like, 1991, you would have picked him out to be the breakout star. If someone told you, oh, one of these people are going to turn out to be, like, this really big, you'd say it would be him. But he could walk down the street and nobody would notice him. Nobody would recognize him.
Yeah.
That's a fact. So, he wasn't the mega star, which certainly this film suggested he might have been.
Because Tinkerbell was often in the air, Julia Roberts had an assistant whose sole responsibility was cleaning her feet. I don't know if that's something you want to put on your CV.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, again, some people, you know, if some people are into dark boxes with scorpions being dropped onto them, I'm sure you could find a few people who wants to clean Julia Roberts' feet in 1991.
The original Peter Pan included only 6 Lost Boys, Slightly, Toodles, Nibs, Curly, and the Unnamed Twins. The Unnamed Twins appear in the imaginary food scene. Toodles is the elderly man who lives with Wendy.
Yeah.
What else have we got here? Oh, fucking hell. This is a fact about the film, isn't it? Bob Hoskins and Robin Williams died within a few months of each other in 2014.
Yeah, that's not very nice. I don't like that. I mean, it is a fact, but anyhow, you got to find at least one more. You can't end on that bloody miserable note.
Captain Hook isn't clearly seen until 40 minutes into the movie.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Because he feels like he's such a big part of it. But yeah, there's a whole long sequence before they even get to Neverland, isn't there? Like, it really does drag on. And I like this stuff, again, those hints at a darker movie. Like, when they go back home and realize their kids have been taken, and there's like the kind of scratch or whatever you want to call it, the tear all the way up the stairs where obviously he's just put his hook in the wall. And it's just, I don't know, they just never really lean into it, which is a bit of a shame. But never mind.
2 more for me.
Cool.
First one, Winona Ryder was going to be considered for Tinkerbell.
She probably would have been better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if these would have been better for Smee. They would have been different. Danny DeVito and Joe Pesci.
Imagine the film with fucking David Bowie and Danny DeVito. I mean, it's a very different film, but again, not one I don't want to see. I mean, they're perfect together. I'm happy with what we got, but there are some legitimately fantastic alternatives there.
Can you imagine with Joe Pesci? Smee, I'm going to kill myself, Smee. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's just Smee, I'm going to kill myself, Smee. Sorry, that was my really bad David Bowie impression off the cuff. So anyway, yeah, very interesting film.
Yeah, all right, let's move on.
Okay, fuck it. Legacy, I mean, it's not the best, but it's arguably the most beloved Peter Pan movie since the 1953 original. I don't even think that's up to debate. I don't want to be harsh on the new movie because I haven't seen it and it hasn't had much time to, breathe, so to speak.
That's just come out, isn't it, Peter?
Yeah, but I don't feel like there's a massive buzz around it. I don't know, maybe that's unfair. The other side of that coin is the fact that this is one of Spielberg's weakest movies. I think it does sit alongside, the fact, I think it speaks to the quality of Spielberg's work, where this film made 300 odd million, is beloved by many, and it's still one of his weakest films, but it is for sure. But like I mentioned, this is loved, and it's not in a cult way. It made 300 million. It was the 6th biggest movie in 1991, and it only sat behind Terminator 2, Prince of Thieves, Beauty and the Beast, Silence of the Lambs, and City Slickers. And I mean, people still love this movie to this day. If enough people listen to this podcast, loads of people will be upset with our opinions, because people seem to have a real attachment to this film. And like I said, that not in a cult way. It wasn't like, oh, it snuck up on people. This was a hit in 1991 and people have loved it ever since, but I just don't feel like it's talked about in the same way. It's like the slightly more successful version of remember Dick Tracy? We did Dick Tracy podcast like, I don't know, 20 30 episodes ago, and we both looked at the box office and went, wait a minute, this was a fucking hit.
Yeah,
like we all just assumed it flopped. It was a fucking hit.
Randomly, same kid.
Yeah, same kid, and he's actually better in that film as well. He's better in that film. I already mentioned earlier, but the last truly analog big budget movie. I'm not saying that definitively, but it certainly feels that way in 1991. Unsurprisingly, Hook was up for 5 Oscars, and they were all the technical ones: best art direction, best costume design, best visual effects, best makeup, and best score. And all those sound absolutely bang on to me, because I was like, wait, did this film win any Oscars? And I was like, I guarantee it must have been at least up for all of those, because it's gorgeous to look at. It sounds fantastic. The costumes are brilliant. And those were all recognized by the Oscars. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actress, which I still think is a little harsh, despite the fact that you hate it.
Oh, people hated it, didn't they?
They certainly did. Oh, and one last thing. This film had a collection of really shit toys, I remember, when I was younger. I had some of the toys, and they were all... Yeah. I remember having, what's his name? Thud Butt. And he used to fold in half, and you could just roll him around. They were just terrible toys. Terrible.
Well, apparently that's what you could do with the actual Thud Butt.
Yeah, it's just weird. Why does he have this odd magic power which no one else has? All the other Lost Boys, they're just kids. He folds in half like a fucking cartoon.
It's not even just like his legs do it. It's like his ass dislocates.
Yeah.
Half of it hinges that way and half of it hinges that way.
It was like they created the toy first and then made him act accordingly. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
In terms of the score soundtrack, we've obviously mentioned a bunch of times, but as divisive as this movie is, I think everyone agrees that the score by John Williams is top tier. I mean, he's coming on the back of a few more like adult themes, grown-up movies, but this feels like he is reveling in the opportunity to really push the limits on this one. For anyone else, I actually think this would arguably be one of their greatest scores. But this is like John Williams, and subsequently is kind of forgotten, which feels a bit harsh, but look what you're competing against. Again, it was up for a number of awards, but specifically the one that was up, I think Oscars for Best Song was When You're Alone, which is the song Maggie sings, which is actually one of my least favorite musical elements of this movie. I think the main theme is the real killer, but it's what
you mean
is.
You're actually going to put Maggie on a negative after you've just like, oh, she looks like...
No, I did earlier. Like her handing over the picture and she gets a little bit moany. I'm just, compared to Jack, she's the much more likable of the children.
Come on,
I don't think you can argue with that.
Come on, Dad. Mummy could reach us, you fucking arsehole.
Yeah, that was a dick move. In terms of video games, there were actually loads. There were side-scrolling versions of varying quality for just about every console and home computer in existence. From the Commodore 64 to the Game Boy, Game Gear, and the Sega CD, which was actually probably the best of the bunch. The ones that I remember, though, were the Genesis and the Super NES versions, which were pretty decent back in the day. The Sega CD one was basically the same game, but it had more music and audio cues, which was a big deal back in the early to mid-90s. Yeah. There was also, bizarrely, though, the ones I didn't know about, there was a side-scrolling beat-em-up for the arcades by Irem, which was bizarre, and a point-and-click adventure developed by Ocean for the Amiga and the Atari, both which, if you look back, actually look pretty cool. The arcade game in particular really does hold up. Today, though, and this feels far too obvious, if I was going to do a Hook video game, I would go for Sea of Thieves by Rare. And I think you'd agree with this, because my only issue with that choice is that you'd be playing as the pirate. So basically what I'm suggesting is a pirate game where you hunt and murder Lost Boys, but with a slightly cheerful exterior as per, Sea of Thieves.
So you're the good guys then?
You're the good guys, yeah. Complete with Boo Box to torture Lost Boys.
Kind of like, I'd have it as an open world game, and if we're looking at like pirates and things like that, I've not played that one you said Sea of Thieves, sorry, but I don't know why I'm apologizing. you pull all these fucking games out your ass like I should know them all.
Sea of Thieves is quite popular, but it's still relatively niche. I know it's fair.
So for me, it'd probably be somewhere along the lines of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so you really are murdering the fuck out of kids in this film, yeah? So the kids, the bad guys, and you're playing as... Are you playing as a lost boy or as a pirate in this film?
Well, you could either...
In this video game, sorry.
You could have it as both sides, couldn't you? But I would probably be a pirate.
I guess what you could do, like in those kind of video games, and they did it with the London-based, was it Assassin's Creed game? You could have the option. So you could either play as the pirates or the Lost Boys and, pick your poison, I guess. Like, do you want to, fight with the pirates and shoot them with like goop, or do you want to go around stabbing kids as a pirate?
Either way you look at it, kids are dying, unfortunately, isn't it?
Kids are dying in this video game adaptation of Hook, that is for sure. It's a bizarre take on the narrative, but, this is what we want. Like I said, though, if you look at Sea of Thieves, at least it does give it a cheery exterior, so it doesn't feel quite as egregious when you're, stabbing kids as a pirate.
All right, I'll give you another one. Monkey Island.
That was exactly what I thought you'd go for. That would be a bit more fun. You could do a much more traditional... But again, I think if you're doing Monkey Island and you went for that style of comedy, you would have to do it from Hook's perspective. Yeah. It would have to be a Dustin Hoffman video game, 100%. And let's be clear, that's the video game we really all want. We don't want to play as Peter. We certainly don't want to play as Peter fucking Banning. Let's play as Dustin Hoffman's Hook.
To be fair, I probably would want to play it from Smee's point of view.
That'd be an interesting one as well.
Because Hook's sending him on these little missions to sort it out and stuff.
Yeah. And I guess that would actually work pretty well in terms of the point-and-click aspect of Monkey Island, where, you could even turn it into, like, just basic things like fetching his goods, you've got to find them, little puzzles, stuff like that. But then most of the writing is kind of centered around their relationship, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you win again. Let's go with that one then. Monkey Island starring Smee and Hook.
We should get a tally up, shouldn't we?
Yeah, no, I don't like it because I'd just be losing. Anyway, so it's the scores and recommendations. In terms of this is a weird one because I've gone back and forth. I actually think the score is 3 stars because I think the good stuff is fantastic, the bad stuff not so great. But I don't regret watching this film. I still kind of enjoy it, and I understand why people love it. Bizarrely, I actually think it's really easy to recommend because it is, for its faults, a really easy watch, and people do tend to, love it. So I would certainly suggest people at least give it a go. I don't feel strongly enough to say you shouldn't watch this film. And if anything, you should watch it for Dustin Hoffman and Bob Hoskins alone. So it's not like a super strong recommend. I'm not like, you fucking have to see Hook. That'd be a really weird thing. Just come in, dude, you gotta fucking see Hook. I'm not gonna be that aggressive. People's like, Hook is on Netflix at the moment. Should I give it a go? Absolutely, give it a go. Just be warned, it's 20 minutes too long, but it's still fun. So 3 stars and a recommendation from me.
So I said at the beginning, like, nonchalantly, it was going to be a 2. But I also said I was hoping you'd have a definitive answer because I didn't know where I stood either when I was watching this film. As we've talked about it and we've said things we didn't like, said things we did like, I'd probably give it a 3 as well.
Yeah.
Because it is very middle of the road in certain aspects. But I wouldn't recommend it. But why I gave it a 3, and I'm leaving it there, I just wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. But why I'm giving it a 3 is because I think back. If I had a choice to rewatch this or Last Jedi, not Last Jedi, Return of the
Jedi.
I'd watch this.
Ooh.
So
that's a fucking big shot there, mate.
Well, Return of the Jedi was terrible, dude.
Why would you bring that up again?
I would watch this over Jedi, but I'm not going to go back and watch either of them. But if I had
fair enough.
My head, if I had to pick one to rewatch, it would be this over Jedi.
I mean, I'm not going to go back, now that I've rewatched it, because I was genuinely interested to see how I felt about it, 20, 30 years later, whatever. But yeah, I won't be rushing back to see it again. But I didn't hate watching it for all its faults, as I said. The good stuff is great. The bad stuff is not so good, obviously. But, I would say just about the good outweighs the bad. And yeah, it's a perfectly decent film. It's unique. It's visually spectacular. It sounds fantastic. Some of the performances, I think we've agreed on, some of them are brilliant. And I think the issues, while easy to pick out, are also easy to overlook if you want to. Yeah. Like especially if you're watching it more passively. We're being purposefully critical of this film. And, some of the weird sex stuff, the stuff with Peter. But if I'm just watching it passively, I'm like, I don't hate Robin Williams in this film. The sexual stuff is just kind of there under the surface. Like, I'd watched it before and never really noticed it. So it was only because I was watching it in a more critical eye. But for the most part, it's a fun film. It's a massively forward film, but it's 3 stars on the snout for me.
I agree. There's no more.
All right, so I hope you're picking a good one for next week, because we've had, it's been divisive the last couple of films. So I assume you've got a stone cold classic up your sleeve for next week.
Well, it kind of depends on your view of these actors, to be fair. But
there you go.
We're going to do the unofficial James Bond sequel.
What the fuck? Oh, The Rock.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, The Rock's a fucking banger. Yeah. The Rock is a banger.
But
you got no problem with that.
There are a lot of people that are not Nick Cage fans. So,
dude, but at least should be Sean Connery fans. And if you don't there is one quote in this film, and it's not a Nick Cage quote. If you don't do it at the head of the podcast next week, I will be fucking devastated.
Fuck the prom queen?
Absolutely fuck the prom queen. And if you don't lean into that Sean Connery impression, I'll be fucking devastated. You've got to go for it.
Do you know what?
I'm going to just go home and fuck the prom queen. It's such a great line. Dude, that they should play that before every sporting event. They should play over all the loudspeakers as the teams walk out at Wembley or wherever the fuck.
The other one I like is when he's talking to the general and he goes, personally, I think you're a fucking idiot, General, sir. I went Irish then, but that's the best you get out of me.
Irish, I think you're a fucking idiot. Well, but there's so many great lines in this film. Like, dude, you just fucked up your Ferrari. It's not mine. It's like, dude, I don't think there's anything divisive about this film at all.
Do you know what we should do?
I can't believe we haven't done The Rock until now. It's a great chat.
We should do, if we're going to do The Rock, should we do the Beige Volvo trilogy?
You got to do the Cage. So then, what would it be? 96, 97, 98? So it would be...
It's 96 and 97, isn't it? He had 2 in 97.
The Rock, Face Off, and Con Air.
Yeah, Rock, Con Air, Face Off.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. We should absolutely do that. 100%.
We got to do the trilogy, haven't we?
Yeah, we should do the trilogy. I love it. And it's worth just doing it just to talk about Nick Cage, because I know, like you said, he's not everyone's cup of tea. I love Nick Cage. When Nick Cage, to bring it back around to the film we've just discussed, like Hook, when he's good, he is fantastic. When he's shit, it's rough. It is rough. I'll be I'm not going to absolve him of the numerous terrible films he's made. But when Nick Cage is firing all cylinders, and more specifically, he's in the right movie, kind of like in a completely different way, similar to Keanu Reeves. Like, Keanu Reeves isn't the greatest actor, but I've always argued, put him in the right role, and he's great. And it's the same with Nick Cage is a better actor than Keanu Reeves, but I still think he needs to be in the right role. So yeah, he was in that amazing bonkers 90s movie star run where he was just, Nicolas Cage was the biggest action hero in the world. What a time to be alive.
You can decide whether or not Con Air is following The Rock, because it's your choice. But
I feel like we should wait. So right, in terms of chronological order, what was the first one released? Was it The Rock first?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should just stick with chronological order then. Just do The Rock.
That's what I mean. But you can decide whether or not you want to pick another film or you want to do the trilogy.
Oh, no. We're doing the trilogy now. So it'll have to be The Rock. So, yeah, we can't even make a big deal about what the next fucking films are. The next 3 films are going to be The Rock, Con Air, and Face Off. So, yeah, easily done. So my choice is Con Air next week.
We'll still play it. What's your choice, mate?
Well, that's the thing, though. It's bizarre, because I'm happy to make that choice. But off the top of my head, and I won't say definitively because I've not actually watched these films for a while, I would argue that Con Air is maybe my least favorite of the 3, but that my mind could change. It's been a while since I've seen them.
Divisive. I don't.
Dude. I mean, let's be clear. We're talking Godfather 1 versus Godfather 2 here.
I don't think we should bring up the better of the 3 until we get Face Off, and then we'll talk about all 3.
Yeah. If I'm going based off what my opinion is now in the top of my head, it's easy. My favorite one's The Rock.
Yeah,
I think it's the best of the bunch. But maybe my mind will be changed.
That's because Sean Connery elevates it. But anyway,
are we just going to do an hour and a half on all the conspiracy theories about how so much of it lines up with him? But anyway, we'll talk about it next week. Thank you for listening to Hook. Surely, if you've listened to this, you're going to join us for The Rock next week. But thanks. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. See you next week. Ass butter.
Oh, and before we forget, here is Rob with all the finer details. Got to get through those, dude.
Yeah, so basically you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Hey You Guys 80s. We're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any recommendations, any corrections or omissions we may have missed from any of the films that we've covered. Just get them in. And also, if you could, please leave us some 5-star reviews. That would really help us. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing. Thanks for that, mate.
Cheers, Darry.
Yeah. And thanks again for listening, and we will see you next week.
Cheers. Bye.
Hey, you guys!